Good morning. This is February 13th, Super Bowl Sunday. My name is Doug Griffin. This is my Sunday school class, and we are going through the book of Genesis. We're in chapter 49. We're almost done. We started chapter 1 like 2 years ago. Um, Almost done. Um, Last week, my teaching, the video stopped, but I didn't know that until I was all done. So I'm going to review and then go on from there. We're talking about Jacob and his relationship with his sons and how his sons were affected by how his father looked at them, and how sometimes we're affected by by expectations people place on us as kids, or sometimes wrongs. So that's in a positive light. They're expecting the best, so they expect, but we're kind of victim to their expectations. Sometimes we think we've got to fulfill what other people are saying about us. And obviously, eventually, we have to learn to fulfill what God is saying about us and not other people, because other people can miss it. Um, or sometimes there have been wrongs that have been done by parents. Um, and so kids can grow up feeling slighted, like they didn't get what they were supposed to have gotten. And the good news, nobody can stop you from getting what God has for you. So maybe a parent has withheld something, but God is the supplier, and God will give you what you need. But that's when we learn to stop looking at, um, hey, Carol, that's when we learn to stop looking to people, start looking to God. So we'll start here, Genesis 49. I'm just going to review a little bit. Jacob has brought all of his 12 sons. Now he's in Egypt. He's supposed to stay there 5 years, but he stayed there 17. Um, but he wants to go back. Please, when I die, carry me back, because God said, and he's told them, God has said, this land is yours, like not Canaan, not Egypt. So sometimes when we end up in an Egypt situation, which happened to them later, it looked really good, and then suddenly everything turned around. That's because we're not where God told us to be. We're in the place that looked better to us. I don't know if you remember, but Abraham and Lot said, our flocks are too big for us to stay together. We both been blessed so much, we're going to have to split up. And Lot looked over at the really fertile ground. He didn't realize that what he was looking at was Sodom and Gomorrah, but that's where he looked. Ooh, and he took the best stuff, which was not where God wanted him to go. And so sometimes you can choose something. Ooh, that's what I want. And it's not what God has for you. Uh, so we got to be clear that we are trying to find out what God has for us, because that's what's going to prosper. So Jacob was saying to his sons, I'm going to bless you, and then you got to take me back to Canaan, which is modern day Israel, because that's what God has for us. The children of Israel chose to stay in Egypt because it looked like a better opportunity. And then suddenly everything turned on them. So you can complain, God, why did you let this happen? But God will say, because I told you to go over there. You chose to go over there. So that's why you're in that situation. But I will still deliver you. That's good news. Even when we mess up, God delivers us from our mistakes. And we don't deserve it. But God says, no, I've got a plan. Yes, you've messed up. It's okay. I've got a plan. It's no problem. So Jacob has called all of his sons together. He's already privately blessed Joseph's sons and adopted them. So they don't know that they're going to have to divide up the land now with Joseph's two sons. There's already 12 sons, and Joseph basically said, Joseph, I'm going to take you out and stick your two sons in there because I'm giving you a double portion. So surprise to everybody else. But he's waiting to tell them that. So he brings the 12 sons together, and he started with Reuben. It says, and Jacob called his sons and says, gather together that I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days. And this is not the last days, like Christ is coming in the last days, but in the what shall befall you before you totally inherit that land, because that's what Jacob knew. God says, I'm going to said to his grandfather Abraham, then to his father Isaac, and to Jacob, I'm going to give you this land. but it's going to be about 400 years before you can take this land. And at that point, you can take it because I will have given 400 years for the Amorites to repent. 400 years for them to turn toward God. And at that point, I can already see they won't have done it. And so I will then kick them out of the land and give it to you. So here's what's going to befall you in the last part of that time before you totally inherit the land. At this point, there's 200 years left. He had said Abraham 400 years, but there's like 200 years left. So gather together, and I will tell you what will happen to you over the next 200 years. Gather together and hear, you sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel, your father. So, verse 3, Reuben, and this is where we started last week. I'm just going to quickly review. Reuben, you're my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength. And that's why the firstborn son always got so much attention during those days, probably still today. And because they're the first, and everyone's so excited when that first child comes along. You find a lot of families, there's 500 pictures of the first kid and 400 pictures of the second kid and 200 pictures of the third kid and like 5 photos of the fourth kid, because the excitement wears off where you think you have to cover every moment. So all this attention is given to the firstborn. You're the first, you're the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Now, he's saying that, but when Reuben was born, that's not how at all he treated Reuben. In Genesis chapter 29, verse 32, it says, so Leah conceived. Now, remember, Jacob had wanted to marry Rachel and thought he was marrying Rachel, but he got drunk, and on their wedding night, the father substituted Leah for Rachel. And he wakes up in the morning and goes, who that? So, and it's Leah instead, and so Jacob feels gypped, he feels cheated, and so he takes it out on her, and he never does love her, never does accept her, or her kids. So when Reuben was born, Jacob was treating the mom really badly because he wanted Rachel, and he married Rachel, so now he's got 2 wives, but he's thinking, oh man, that was a mistake, and we can be bitter about stuff. Instead of going to God and say, well, God, why did you allow this? How are you going to redeem this situation? We can spend our time just being angry about it and mess up, basically. So it says, Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben, which means, look, a son. And to her, that was, she's saying this actually to Rachel. She's saying, ha, look, I'm the one that God has blessed. I've got a son. So there. So I know my husband is spending all his time with you instead of with me. But behold, I've got a son. It's like bragging rights, right? For she said, the Lord has looked at my affliction. Now, therefore, my husband will love me. And that's the story she told Reuben. You're here so that God will, cause Jacob to love me. And that's why God brought you here. So, and there's a pressure. And sometimes in marriages, there's that kind of pressure put on that child. You're going to save our marriage. And when it doesn't work, the child gets the message that he's a failure. And this is what Reuben got. That's the message he got from the parents. The deal is, nobody's here by accident. God has a purpose for everybody. So even though he didn't fulfill the purpose that Leah thought he was designed for, God had a purpose for Reuben. And if we can feel like failures because a parent or someone can put an assignment on us. Here's your assignment. Here's your job. Here's why God put you here on earth. You're going to be an astronaut or a politician, And then when we don't live up to that, we feel like a failure because we're putting our faith in what the parent has said or the older brother or whoever, instead of going to God and say, okay, God, what's your purpose here? What you tell me why I'm here. Because we'll find ourselves doing something different and never appreciating what we are doing because we're thinking, but I'm not doing what I was supposed to do. So what I've ended up doing is second best. As opposed to, no, that's what God brought you on earth to do, but you've never appreciated it because you keep feeling like you should have done the other thing, right? That was told you as a child. You're supposed to do this. So Reuben spends his time trying to be the person that his mother said he's supposed to be. Never works. Jacob never does love Leah, so he feels like a failure. Uh, and it says in Genesis chapter 35, because so Jacob spends all his time with Rachel. In fact, Leah has 6 sons. The Leah's maid has 2 sons. Rachel's maid has 2 sons. So there's 10 kids born before Rachel finally gives birth to Joseph. And of course, Jacob, like Joseph, finally Rachel had a child. Even though it's child number 11, even though God waited all that time trying to teach me a lesson, still, I'm going to put all my love in Joseph, which is why his brothers finally threw him into a pit. And now Rachel's about to have her second child, Benjamin. It says in Genesis chapter 35, verse 18, and so it was as her soul was departing, for she died in childbirth, right, that she called his name Ben-Oni, which means the son of my pain, son of my sorrow. And his father said, I don't want that laid on him. So instead he called him Ben-Chamin, son of my right hand. And so now the brothers can't take it because they already had to put up with Joseph. But now you're saying son number 12, he's your right hand. So a verse later, oh, and then she passes away. Then Rachel passes away. This woman that Jacob had focused all his attention on. 2 verses later, Reuben sleeps with Rachel's handmaiden. And this is on purpose. Because he's desperate to be the man of the house in Jacob's eyes. So I'll do what you do, Jacob. You slept with Rachel's maid and you had 2 kids by her. I'll sleep with her too. So I'll finally be the man that you never think I. And sometimes we'll spend our lives trying to prove to somebody that we're that person. I'm going to prove to you. And that's a waste of time. We end up sabotaging us because we don't have to prove anything to anybody other than God. God, what did you design me to be? And whatever God designs it to be, it's going to be easy for us to do because that's what he put inside of us. So we don't have to live a life trying to prove to somebody else we're worthy, but sometimes we'll do that. And that bitterness, that anger at that parent will make us make wrong decisions with our own lives, which is what Reuben did. Bless his heart. So it didn't get him the points that he thought it was going to get him. Like, well, now, I slept with her too, Dad, so I'm on your level. No, you're not. And it didn't. So his father's obviously hideously angry with him about that. When the brothers turn on Joseph, toss him into the pit, Reuben has a plan to rescue Joseph. This is how I will prove to my dad and win his affection. So Joseph shows up, and the brothers actually say, let's kill him. And it's Reuben who says, no, let's not kill him. Let's just throw him in the pit. And that way we didn't kill him. He'll just die in the pit. And his plan was to come back, the Bible says, later and rescue him and take him home and say, Dad, now you'll finally love me because look what I did. Now, God thwarted that because that's not how you win Jacob's love. And he's saying, Reuben, that's not your concern. I'll work on Jacob. Your concern is to win my love and be the person that I want you to be, not the person he wants you to be. And that's our concern. So if we're doing stuff to prove to a parent or to get back at a parent or to win them over, then we're never living the life that God's designed us to live. So when Reuben goes back, Joseph is gone because Judah said, let's not let him die in the pit. Let's sell him off to Egypt. And so they sell him off to the Egyptians and think he's done with, but they didn't tell Reuben their plan. So Reuben says in Genesis 37:30, he returned to his brothers and said, the lad is no more, because he thinks he's been killed. He says, where shall I go? Like, I can't go back. I mean, he was my responsibility, and Dad already hates me. So this is where Reuben's at. So Jacob says to Reuben when he's praying for him, you're unstable as water. This is Genesis 49:4. You shall not excel. I can see that you've never found a foundation. Now, it's partly Jacob's fault that he never found a foundation, but it's also Reuben's fault. We can't blame everything on a parent, because how we respond, that's our choice. And everybody responds differently. But however you responded, that's your choice. The best response is, you know what? That's where you're at, and I'm not going to let that worry me. I'm going to worry about how God looks at me. I'm going to try to please the Lord. But as long as you're trying to please that parent, then there's going to be problem. Hey, Denise and Pingo. Okay, so hopefully I'm still broadcasting. Um, so uh, um, he says, "You will not excel. You're unstable as water because you went up to your father's bed. So you committed the worst sin. You actually had sex with your stepmother. Then you defiled it." He says. Uh, So here's Reuben stuck again. I can't please my father. So this anger develops in him. And when the children of Israel are later, and this is just taught what Reuben felt he taught to his sons, who taught to his sons, who taught to his sons. We've been shortchanged. We, you know, we never got what we were supposed to get. Again, what God has for you, man can't take it away. That they tried to take it from Joseph. We'll kill Joseph, but God had a different plan for Joseph, so it didn't work. So what God has for you, man can't take that. You got to go. Okay, Lord, what do you have for me? I know that I was supposed to have gotten this inheritance, or supposed to have gotten this thing. That's okay. God will take care of that person. But what do you have for me? Instead, Reuben spends all his time being angry, right? So when the children of Israel go out of Egypt, uh, the sons of Korah have a revolt. This is 200 years later. They wanted to be the head of the tribe of Levi. They wanted to be the head priest. They did have an assignment. They weren't the head priest, but they were the vice president uh, priest. So they're mad at Aaron, like, and who told you that you get to be? And so within the tribe of Levi, there's a little inner fight where they're challenging each other. And even though God had chosen Aaron, and because Levi had three sons, and God chose like the middle son to be the head, and then the other two sons were supposed to work alongside him. But they're mad because they didn't get what they're supposed to get. And who do they get to? What tribe decides to stick it to the man? The sons of Reuben, not no one else. Reuben's not even part of it, but the sons of Reuben are still angry that when they see somebody being challenged, when they see Korah challenging Moses and challenging Aaron and saying, "How dare you?" They're like, "Yeah, that's how I feel. How dare you?" It's like unresolved anger at their own dad. So they join in. And now, when the earth opens up and swallows the sons of Korah for challenging, Reuben's, a lot of their tribes got swallowed up with them because they shouldn't have been part of that. That wasn't their business. But they're still angry. And again, we can still be angry. I'm still mad about this, and that anger still drives us to um, do crazy things. Okay, so Numbers chapter 32, when the children of Gad, again, Jacob has 12 sons, uh, decided they didn't want to cross the Jordan. It says Reuben came and went with them in Numbers chapter 32, verses 2. That Gad and Reuben says, we don't want to cross the Jordan. And that's the whole deal, was to get back to Canaan. That was the whole deal, was to cross the Jordan and go back to what God had. No, we're going to stay on this side. So there. And so Reuben and Gad became easy pickings for uh, the Assyrians to come down, because they didn't have the protection of being with their brothers in Israel. They'd stayed on the other side of the Jordan, and in what is today modern day Jordan, instead of Israel. And when the Assyrians came down, they got them and uh, stole them off into slavery, because they weren't where they're supposed to be, because they're still reacting out of being angry. Okay, so now we're going on to Simeon and Levi, and hopefully, uh-oh, hopefully everybody's still with me and I'm still broadcasting, I hope. Okay. Okay. I'm just checking to see. So, um, we're going to move on to sons number 2 and 3. And Jacob puts them together. Simeon and Levi are brothers, it says, meaning you're two of a kind. Now, really, they actually weren't. Simeon was the ringtail leader. Simeon was the ringleader, and Levi was just following Simeon. It says, you are brothers. Uh, Simeon was named Simeon. It says, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved. Therefore, he has given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon, which means the Lord has heard. Now, he has a different assignment. As opposed to Reuben, your assignment, you're here on earth to make my son, husband love me, which he could only fail at. Simeon, you're God's answer because to my injustice. God has heard. So he's heard how badly I've been treated, and that's why you're here. God knows how badly I've been treated, and that's why you're, and this is drummed into Simeon's head. So he feels like I'm here to root out injustice. That's my job, to find injustice, and because I'm God's voice on the earth. God has heard my injustice, his mother tells him, and that's why you're here. That your name is God has heard about what's happening to me. That's her implication. So, and then Levi's name, when she has the third child, again, Rachel's had 0 at this point. Leah's had 3 in a row. Now my husband will come attached to me. You're the glue. So I have borne him 3 sons, and his name will be called Levi. Now, nothing Leah did ever worked, right? And she could have just let it go. Well, and she finally does let it go with the 4th son. But for the first 3, she gives them an assignment. So you're the glue, Levi. That's what his name meant, the reconciler, right? So, Simeon and Levi, he says, you're brothers. When Simeon heard that his sister Dinah had been mistreated, remember, he hears about injustice because your God has heard, that's your name. God's heard about this. When Simeon hears that his sister Dinah has been mistreated, been raped, he and Levi devise a plan. The reason we're pretty sure it was Simeon as the ringleader is because when they get to Egypt and they see Joseph sitting on the throne, they thought they got rid of him, right? But there he is on the throne, but they don't recognize him. Joseph says, one of you has to stay behind. And they unanimously vote for Simeon. Let Simeon stay because he's the craziest. They need to get rid of him. So it feels like Simeon, like Levi was the follower, and Simeon, because you can see what later happens. I'll explain. So Simeon's the ringleader, and Simeon is the one that devises this plan with his brother Levi to kill all the men who were responsible for his sister being raped. Now, interestingly, none of the rest of the men were responsible. Only one man was responsible, but they kill him and all of his followers and his brother, his family. They just go crazy. Uh, so it says, now it came to pass. So they devised this plan, and we've heard this before, where he says, we're going to have to circumcise all of you in order to make up for what you did to my sister Dinah. And then we can approve her marrying this guy. And so they take all these grown men and they circumcise them. So the 3rd day they're in pain, of course, because all you have is a sharp rock to do the circumcision with. So on the 3rd day, it says in Genesis 34:25, when they were in pain, the 2 sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came boldly upon the city and killed all the males. Again, it seems like Simeon was the leader. So when Jacob is praying for both of them, since they both did that, and it's Jacob that's lumping them together, not God. Jacob is lumping them together. He says, instruments of cruelty are in your dwelling place. Let not my soul enter their counsel. Let not my Honor be united to their assembly, for in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they hamstrung an ox. So they took an ox, and I guess you cutting his hamstrings or something, so that the ox is now useless. And just like Jacob's like, why would you even do that to an animal? That's so crazy. They're probably gonna have to kill that animal later because now the animal's useless. So cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath. Oh, good. Okay. Uh, Cursed be their anger and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob. Now I want to go to Levi. What happened with Levi? We'll get to Simeon in a second, but I want to go to what happened with Levi. Um, this is how Levi turned things around. And this is where Simeon didn't. So I can understand having a lot of anger, but how can you give that over to God? You know, some people are just fierce personalities. How can you give that over to God? Um, Levi was used to following Simeon, and Levi turns it around because Reuben never redeemed his life. Simeon didn't. They chose not to. Um, is everything? Am I on and everything? Okay, so, uh, um, but Levi did. So we can turn things around. So here's how Levi turned it around. Because Levi, as we know, they became priests, but Jacob's saying you're just cruel, and he's lumped them together, and sometimes an authority figure, an adult, can lump you. You're just like, and you actually aren't. You're just like your father, or whatever, and you actually aren't. You don't have to take that on. Levi decided not to take that on. So let's see where this happens. In Exodus chapter 32, Moses has gone up into the wilderness. I'm sorry, up on Mount Sinai to talk to God. He'd come back with the 10 Commandments. While he was gone, the children of Israel, because he was gone for 40 days, said, 40 days, time's up. We're going to go back to Egypt. Even though we can see the thunder and lightning on the mountain, we don't know what's become of him. He could be dead, and we're just sitting here doing nothing. So we're going to go back to Egypt. Now, everyone didn't feel that way. There were just certain ringleaders who felt that way, right? And everyone else says, okay, and because they're followers. There are leaders and there are followers. So the leaders said, we're going to go back, and they had Aaron build a calf, and they danced around it, and they go to the club. They had a great time partying, and Moses comes back down and sees this, throws the tablet on the ground, screams at everybody. They keep partying, which is fantastic. That's amazing.
They turned up.
Right. They turned it up even higher. Then he took the calf, which they had made, and he burned it in a fire, and he ground it to powder, and he scattered it on the water and made the children of Israel drink it, right? So here's why I think he did that. In Numbers chapter 5, when they're trying to, so the book of Numbers is what happened after that. The book Exodus takes us from Egypt to Mount Sinai. The book of Numbers takes us is everything that happened after that until the time that when they reject and refuse to go into the wilderness, go across the Jordan. When they say, no, we can't do that. There are giants in the land. It's that 40-year period. Deuteronomy is their instructions as they're now about to cross over into the Jordan. Like, okay, finally you're about to cross over. Let me give you your final instructions. And Leviticus is what happens right. It's all about the holy. Here's how I want you to build a tabernacle. The book of Levi is like, here are all the laws and the rules so you can be holy. Okay. But Numbers covers all the experiences they had from the time that Moses broke the 10 Commandments until they're about to go into finally cross over into the Jordan. So God's giving them their laws, and he says, if the spirit of jealousy comes upon a husband, like if you suspect that your wife might have cheated on you, you can't tell, you weren't there, but she's just hanging out with that guy and you don't know what that means. You could be right, you could be wrong. If the spirit of jealousy comes over him and becomes jealous of his wife, who has defiled herself, or if the spirit of jealousy comes upon him and he becomes jealous of his wife, although she has not defiled herself. Like, so God's acknowledging you might be jealous and it might be in your imagination, or she might have done something. How can you tell who did it if you weren't there? So he says, the priest shall take holy water in an earthen vessel and take some of the dust that is on the floor of the tabernacle and put it into the water. So you brought her to the temple. She's standing on the temple and the tabernacle. And now you're going to take some of the dust from under her feet where she stood. You're going to pour it in this water, right? And then verse 19 says, and the priest shall put her under oath and say to the woman, if no man has lain with you, and if you have not gone astray to uncleanness while under your husband's authority, be free from this bitter water that brings a curse. So she's got to drink it. And something's going to happen to her. If she has done wrong, there's going to be an outward sign. Now, they didn't have the Holy Spirit in them to tell them who had done wrong or who hadn't done wrong, because they weren't able to have that kind of relationship with God yet. So everything had to be external in order for God to show them what to do. He had to set a bush on fire or do certain things because they didn't have the Spirit of God in them like we do. So here's an external way of determining what happened when you weren't there. She's going to drink this. If she didn't do anything, nothing will happen. If she did commit adultery, which is God's just least favorite thing, because he hates covenant breaking. He's trying to teach them about covenant and you keep your word. And so adultery is like, that's one of his least favorite sins. If she has done it, then, well, okay, I'll just read what it says. So if the priest shall put her under oath, say to the woman, if no man has lain with you, and if you have not gone astray to uncleanness while under your husband's authority, be free from this bitter water that brings a curse. But, verse 20 of Numbers chapter 5, if you have gone astray while under your husband's authority, and if you have defiled yourself, and some man other than your husband has lain with you, when he has made her drink the water, then it shall be, if she has defiled herself and behaved unfaithfully toward her husband, that the water that brings a curse will enter her and become bitter. And her belly will swell, her thigh will rot, and the woman will become a curse among the people. So this is how they're able to tell this thing that nobody else saw them do. So Moses comes down from the mountain. He does not know who the ringleaders were. He sees everybody dancing, but he knows that there were certain people who started it all. So he takes, whose idea was this? To take this calf and build it and go back to Egypt. He doesn't know. He wasn't there, and nobody's going to admit it, right? So I'm grounding up the calf, pouring it in the water. You'll drink it, and whoever it was, there was going to be some visible sign. That's what we're assuming, and he'll be able to tell. So Exodus chapter 32, he makes them all drink. Verse 26. Now, when Moses saw that the people were unrestrained. Now, it says, for Aaron had not restrained them for their shame among their enemies. This word unrestrained sometimes means naked, or sometimes it just means that they had untied themselves from God, right? Either way, you've let loose, right? Either you've untied yourself from your clothes or you've untied yourself from God. So even after they drank it, they're still not tied to God. It says that Moses stood in the entrance of the camp and said, whoever is on the Lord's side, come to me. So he's giving them a chance. And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves together to him. Now, remember, Levi had been a follower to Simeon. And he said, you know what? I'm going to go a different way. We're going to follow the Lord now. Because I spent my life following after Simeon and getting in trouble with Simeon, and I'm going to make a different choice. I'm being offered redemption, and God offers everyone redemption. There's always a chance for us to make different choices. So he chooses only the tribe of Levi, again, goes, but the entire tribe goes. We're now going to tie ourselves to God. And so they go and stand with Moses and the other 11 tribes. They all stand over there, and there's 600,000 people in the wilderness at this point. 600,000 men, so probably 1.2 million. right at this point. And he says to them, thus says the Lord God of Israel, let every man put his sword on his side. So he's talking to the tribe of Levi. You take your sword from your side, go in and out from entrance to entrance throughout the camp, because you're going to go to everybody's camps, because now everybody went back to their tents. And you're looking for the people, he doesn't say this, but they're looking for the people who, when they drank that stuff, there's some visible sign now that they were the ones, that they were the ringleaders. He says, and let every man kill his brother, every man his companion, every man his neighbor. So the sons of Levi did according to the word of Moses. Now, there's 600,000 people. They've just finished counting. There were 60,000 from this tribe, and 60,000 from this tribe, and 50,000 from this tribe, and 70,000 and 40,000 from. They only killed 3,000 of the 600,000. So they were obviously looking for specific people. He didn't say, go and kill all 600,000 people. They were looking for specific signs of who the ringleaders were, because they only killed 3,000 out of the 600,000. But the sons of Levi did it. Then Moses said, consecrate yourselves today. So it says, so the sons of Levi did according to the word of Moses, and about 3,000 men of the people fell that day. Then Moses says, consecrate yourselves today to the Lord, that he may bestow on you a blessing this day. For every man has opposed his son and his brother. You've chosen God over your brother. So you get a reward for that. You're going to be consecrated to God now. And this is you redeeming your life. Now, God has offered the redemption. And Levi, this is going to be your new role. In Numbers chapter 3, verse 5 through 7, we have the actual consecration of the Levites. And they have a new role where you used to be a follower of Simeon and a follower of this person, and you follow that person into evil. Now you can follow God into good. Because I've seen your dedication, and I know how fierce you are, right? You and your brother slew all those people. You've been taught to be fierce, you tribe of Levi, but I'm going to use that same energy for how I designed you, okay? And your mother said that you were the reconciler. So it turns out you can live up to that, but you're not going to reconcile what she thought you're supposed to reconcile. She thought you're here to reconcile my husband with me, but you're going to reconcile the people with God. You're going to now be the go-between, Levi. So that talent that the parent misunderstood, recognized, but misunderstood, put it in the wrong place, that talent, God has given it to you, and now I'm now putting it in the correct place. So again, somebody can recognize, boy, you just talk a lot, or boy, you just always dancing around, and then say the wrong thing. You need to be quiet, or you dance around so much. Let me get you a straight jacket to keep you still. But God's like, no, you dance around a lot because I've made you a dancer. So you're going to end up in these dance classes. Or you talk so much, instead of making you be quiet, I'm going to tell you what to say, and you're going to be a preacher or a politician or a speaker or a teacher, God. So someone can look at your talent and then give you the wrong way to use it. But God's looking at Levi and saying, that talent, that thing of being a reconciler that your mom said, you're going to reconcile the people to God. So in Numbers chapter 3, verse 5, it says that the Lord spoke to Moses saying, bring the tribe of Levi near and present them before Aaron the priest, that they may serve him, and they shall attend to his needs and the needs of the whole congregation before the tabernacle of meeting. So they weren't personally attending to Aaron's personal needs, but Aaron had been made a priest. So whatever the priest needs you to do, tribe of Levi, you're going to attend to his needs in the temple and the whole congregation before the tabernacle of meeting to do the work of the tabernacle. You're going to be priests now. And so when people come to the tabernacle and they bring their animals to be slain, you'll do it. Because you like cutting people up, tribe of Levi. You cut up all those people who attacked Dinah, and you cut up that animal and hamstrung an ox. And so now apparently you'll have no problem cutting up these sheep and these ox that are brought to be slain, and so their blood can be shed for the remission of the people's sins. He says, now behold, verse 12, I myself have taken the Levites from among the children of Israel, instead of every firstborn who opens the womb among the children of Israel. So what does he mean? Well, when God came to Pharaoh and said, Pharaoh, let my people go, let my people go. He used Moses and Aaron to say this. Pharaoh kept refusing. And he gave him, there were 10 plagues, 10 opportunities, right? And every time God said, if you don't do it, I'm going to turn the river to blood. If you don't do it, I'll send locusts. If you don't do it. And every time God was true to his word. And then he comes to Pharaoh and says to him, um, I am going to send the death angel to judge all the firstborn. And this was over everyone who's in Israel. And now Pharaoh had no reason to doubt it. But people just doubt God. Like, no. And you can raise Christ from the dead, and people still say, no, I don't want to believe it. They just refuse to believe it. So all the firstborn who are in Egypt are doomed. Judgment has come to them. But God says, if you will take this lamb's blood and put it over your doorpost, then you'll be redeemed from this judgment. Because all the firstborn have been judged. Pharaoh's given that opportunity. But of course, they don't believe. The Egyptians give that opportunity. No. But the children of Israel, they believed. And they took the lamb's blood and put it over their doorpost. So the firstborn were redeemed. They had been scheduled for judgment. The judgment that's due us all, God was scheduling it to happen at that time. So all of us who are not in right relationship with God, judgment is coming toward us. But the blood of Jesus is over us and has protected us from that judgment. So it was the judgment that was due them. God was just saying, I'm going to exact it now on all the firstborn, unless you have the blood over you. So he says in verse 12, now behold, I myself have taken the Levites from among the children of Israel instead of every firstborn. So he says, once I redeemed you, the firstborn who were redeemed, I'm redeeming you for my service. So the firstborn son in every household, you'll act as a priest. You'll act as the go-between your family and God. And that's the assignment he gives them. Since I've redeemed you, now you'll be priest. Well, he's telling the Levites, you will now stand in their stead. Instead of the firstborn of every family acting as a priest, I've chosen a tribe. You will act as priest. You will be the go-between for the entire congregation. So he says, I have taken the Levites from among the children of Israel instead of every firstborn who opens the womb among the children of Israel. Therefore, the Levites shall be mine, because all the firstborn are mine. Remember, I redeemed them. I saved their lives. So now you belong to me. He says, on the day that I struck all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, I sanctified to myself all the firstborn in Israel, both man and beast. They shall be mine. I am the Lord. So remember, that's what I said. I'm rescuing all the firstborn. And we are God's. Once we put the blood of Jesus over us, once the blood that was shed for us, we take that. This is now you are mine. You are mine. You get all the inheritance. You are now the go-between between God and man. Now we serve as priests, so we go out and try to connect people. We become Levites and trying to reunite people, because that's what the name Levi means, the reuniter to God. So he says, Levi, this is your specific duty, not just the firstborns, but this is your specific, this is what your tribe shall now do. Exodus chapter 11, verse 4 through 5. Then Moses says, thus says the Lord, about midnight. Oh, all this is about midnight I will go to the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn. This is Moses talking to Pharaoh. About midnight I will go into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die. From the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on the throne into the firstborn of the female servant who's behind the handmill, all the firstborn of the animals. So Moses warned Pharaoh and said, this is what's going to happen at midnight, either believe it or not. And we tell people that all the time. The Lord, Christ is coming again. God, you're going to have to stand before God. You can believe it or not, but I'm giving you the warning. And then people either, I don't believe that. So, okay. So Pharaoh said, even though I've seen all these plagues happen, I still don't believe that. No, you can't do that. Okay. So Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 8 through 9. At that time, the Lord separated the tribe of Levi. So this is Moses now reflecting back on what happened. Remember, the book of Deuteronomy is summing up everything that's happened the past 40 years, because they're about to go into cross over the Jordan and go into the promised land. So he's just summing up. So he says, at that time, way back 40 years ago, the Lord separated the tribe of Levi to bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord, to minister to him, and to bless his name. To this day, Therefore, to this day, it's been 40 years we've been in the wilderness, and the Levi, this has been their assignment to this day. Therefore, Levi has no portion nor inheritance with his brethren. The Lord is his inheritance, just as the Lord your God promised him. So when you're about to cross over into the Jordan, I am not going to give Levi their own land. God, I'm going to sprinkle them all throughout 48 different cities, and all the different tribes are going to have their own land that I've given them. And Levi, you're going to go, and I'm just sprinkling you all and scattering you all throughout, so you don't have a specific land that's yours. You're going to be the priest, just like there are priests or ministers and congregations. There's not a church somewhere where all the priests go and live and all the ministers all go to this church. They're scattered throughout all the different congregations. So he says, I'm going to scatter you that way. You won't have your own inheritance. The Lord will be your inheritance. The Lord will provide for you. And so when Jacob is prophesying over Levi, he says, I will divide them in Jacob. And so when they were in the wilderness, he says, and scattered them in Israel. I divided them, Jacob talks about when they're in the wilderness, and then I will scatter them in Jacob. That's when they finally cross back over to Israel. So Jacob is a type of the wilderness when we're not quite where God wants us to be. But Israel is the type of now we're finding where God wants us to be. So he says, I will divide them in Jacob. And he does. He divides them up and gives them an assignment and says, you're going to be divided. He says, and I'm going to scatter them in Israel. So this is what happens with Simeon. Do I have time to real quickly with Simeon? So in Judges chapter 1, after they've crossed over, so remember, now Levi redeemed themselves. Levi says, I'm not going to follow Simeon anymore. I'm going to follow the Lord. I'm not going to, and any of us at any time says, I'm not going to be subject to what this person has said to me and how this person described me and how this person has said, you're going to amount to nothing or you're no good. I am good. God has given me worth. You can fight that in your mind. On the other hand, there are parents who put too much expectations on a child. Because I have friends, Jewish friends, whose parents survived the Holocaust. And their parents have given them the idea in their head, there's a reason that I was spared. God has some big special thing for you to do. Because look at all these other Jews who were killed in the Holocaust, but my family was spared, so therefore there's some reason that God spared me, and you've got to go and do some incredible things. And so they have a lot of pressure on themselves to achieve. I have friends who just go like nonstop, Jewish friends, because they feel like they've got to save the world, and they do and go and do because our family was spared, and so and their bodies are falling under the stress of it now, because a parent can put too much on you. So on the one hand, there can be a parent that says you're no good, and you can believe that. And it doesn't have to be a parent; it could be any older influence in your life that tells you, a bully or somebody, you're no good, and you can believe that, and then live that lie and believe it, or you can spend your whole life trying to fight that. I'll show you, or you can say that was you. I don't care what your opinion is; it's what God says about me. That's important. Or on the other hand, you have a parent who can put too much on you or say, you're supposed to do this. And then either you never live up to that, so you disappoint yourself. You think, oh, my parents said I was supposed to have been the mayor, but I only ended up, a doctor. And so therefore I'm a disappointment. And not look at your life and realize God had something for you. It doesn't matter if the parents misjudged or, inadvertently said the wrong thing. You're not a failure. Or they're the parents who maybe put too much expectation. You're going to do great things. I know someone who feels that they were a miracle child. Like my mother couldn't have kids, and then suddenly I was born. And so they've got this pressure on them, like, I'm supposed to be a minister because I've got to fulfill, and has never lived up to that, because that's not why God brought them here. But that's what they've told themselves, and they've stressed. So you can stress your own self out, right? And so Simeon was told, "You're an angry person, and they didn't know what to do with that." So Simeon just shrinks away at a certain point. Like, if I can't be what my parent told me to be, then I'll be nothing. And so they chose nothing. in Judges chapter 1, verses 3, Judah says to Simeon, his brother, once they start dividing up the land, come with me to my allotted territory, that we may fight against the Canaanites. Like, Simeon, you weren't really given anything. So, and I will likewise go with you to your allotted territory. And Simeon went with Judah, and Judah carved out a spot for Simeon within Judah, and Simeon just kind of disappears because Simeon told themselves, if we can't be what we were told they were supposed to be, then I'll just be nothing. And again, the the answer is to go to God and say, Lord, what do you want me to be? Who did you design me to be? That's who I'm going to please. It doesn't matter what somebody else said. They may have said it with all the love in their heart. One day you're going to be a minister, and that was a compliment. And they're just, but that's not how it turned out. And so you can feel like a failure when really it was that parent or that person saw something in you, but they got it wrong because they're not God. And you can spend your whole life trying to fulfill what that parent said, and when you can't do it, then you just, okay, well, I'll just do nothing. Like, I'll just go way the other way. And instead, we need to spend our lives like Levi, and say, find your place. Like Judah, which we'll talk about next week. Lord, you tell me what my place is. You tell me what I'm supposed to be, and I'm going to let go of all the things I heard in the past that were well-meaning, some of them, or some of them might have been evil, but whatever they were, I'm not going to let that influence me. I'm going to find my spot because I'm going to be the person that you want me to be. I'm going to see myself the way you see me, and then my life will find that redemption. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. We're going to start with Judah next week. And see how they redeemed themselves, and how and what it is that Jacob prophesies for Judah and Joseph and his other sons, and then how they turned their lives around, or they succumbed. So I've called this fall and redemption. Are you going to fall underneath the weight of what you've been told about yourself, or are you going to rise above that and say, Lord, I only want to know what you see, how you see me, because that's the person I want to be. Okay, so thanks so much for tuning in. At 11, I will be preaching at my church, so if you're just nutty and like I need more, then at 11 o'clock you would go to Good Shepherd MBC, Missionary Baptist Church, MBC LA, on Facebook, or to our website, and you can. I'll be preaching on Joshua. We're in Joshua chapter 10. All right, thank you so much, and God bless you. And the rest, I'll see you Wednesday for Wednesday Bible study. We're in the book of John.